Compositing 5.0, powerful yet simple. We are watching the different videos from the Blender conference 2025. The idea is to watch it together. So please let me know what do you think about this new section, and let's get
All right,
started.
welcome everyone. Hello. Okay, so my name's Habib. As you can tell, I work for Blender. I will be talking about the compositor today. We'll talk about all the new cool features and our futures for the plan, or the plan for the futures. There you go. And I'll also give tips here and there about how you can contribute as someone from the community. So before I accidentally take credit for things I didn't do, I would like to acknowledge a few people that contributed to this work that I'll be presenting today. Most notably Omar from the compositor module, but also other people from other modules like the geometry nodes, what we formerly call nodes and physics module, who laid out a lot of groundwork for us that we're relying on. So I'll be presenting a lot of that work and also the contributions from the artists that you don't really see directly, all of those people that give us feedback as well from the Blender studio as well as from the community. Having said that, so let's get started. But before I start with all the features and the plans and so on, I would like to take a small step back. And similar to the keynotes today, to ask ourselves a little bit, why does Blender exist? Why? What's its mission? What's its purpose? And to keep the long story short, I'd like to paraphrase the vision here a bit, which is to really enable artists to make art from start to finish in Blender. So it's not really just one tool for that one little niche thing, it's for the whole pipeline. And you can tell already, where the talk is going, right? So let's keep that in mind.
When I started using Blender, I had different friends when I was working in a company, and they were like really stunned when they knew that Blender could make a lot of different things in only one software. Nowadays, it's not like it doesn't look like a really crazy thing as as before. But when I told my colleagues that Blender could edit, composite, make the 3D models, animate, rigging, it had a game engine. It was like a really crazy thing.
While we talk about the new features, I would also like to focus a little bit on the why we're talking about the new features and not just explain them as they are.
And nowadays, the thing that you can sculpt, for instance, that you can sculpt and also work with the traditional 3D modeling with polygons, I think that is a really good advantage for Blender. In ZBrush, you can sculpt and use C modeler, but I think Blender is more user friendly when you need to sculpt and also model with polygons.
All right, let's go. I'm relatively new to Blender, at least as a full-time developer, so the plan for this year was to restructure the module a bit, and we did that beginning of this year. As you can see, not that many people actually, at least for now. And we met together in the beginning of the year and we set some goals for the upcoming future. We discussed a lot of things, but in this presentation I would like to focus on two things. So we will be striving for consistency as a first goal, and the second goal is to ensure Blender's vision is also realized in the compositor module. And that's how I'll be I'll be talking about. So these two things. So let's start with consistency. What does it mean to to do something consistent or to design something consistent. In the compositor context, this means being consistent with other parts of Blender. This is an example of the compositor using nodes from geometry nodes. On the left, you see how the mix color node is defined and how it looks like for the shader and geometry nodes. And on the right, you see the compositor. And what we do are things like really unify them looks-wise and behavior-wise. Another example with the map range node, how it used to be and how it's now. So these are the straightforward examples. Just to give you an idea, this is not always the case. So sometimes we are faced with design decisions where we see some nodes being designed for one reason or another. For example, here in the shader editor, the texture coordinates. And in geometry nodes, there is no texture coordinates, there is image info. And we need these nodes in the compositor, but they don't really make sense as they are. We don't really deal with objects in the compositor, and we don't really need the frame for the image in the compositor. So we can't really go for consistency all the time. And this is one of the design challenges that we face over and over again. So we ended up doing something like that really goes only for the compositor, that is specific. We go for some sort of consistency when it comes to looks, when it comes to as you can see, all the red bars that people know this is input, this is an image, and that's what we decide for the compositor. Not to hang too much on the details, but I want to just mention the reasoning behind it. And the way that we approach it usually is to not ask the whole community first, but really to find one or two artists. Typically, really just one. Just work with them very closely. What do you think about this? How should it look like? Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's someone from the studio. But for within a certain feature, it's really one or two people. This is just an example for how we do it online. And then after that, we go to the community and ask for online feedback from everyone else. So once we're more or less ready for it, just to make sure we didn't miss anything important, and gather just feedback. Blender Artist or DevTalk are typically the place we go for artist feedback. That's how we approach designs of those nodes where the design is not straightforward. Another thing we did is procedural nodes. So now there are so many new procedural nodes in the compositor. Maybe you're familiar with procedural nodes in the shader editor. Mm-hmm. Now we can do something like noise generation in a procedural way in the compositor as well. So this is not brand new to Blender, but it is new to the compositor, all going through to that consistency goal.
Okay.
So you can see here in the sense that consistency also means new features, but the same features the way they were defined in other places of Blender. Speaking of that, so once we introduce new features from the compositor point of view, we also try to make it consistent with the existing parts or of the other parts. So it's a two-way road, right? And so you either look for how is it done elsewhere and we do it, or we do it ourselves and try to make it work elsewhere. This is an example for the viewer nodes, like we introduced some shortcuts, but then it was a little bit inconsistent with other places, so we go there and fix them. Just an example of how the look and behavior of those nodes look like. There is also a similar feature where we removed use nodes from the compositor editor, and what we someone's happy. So what we need to do is also to remove it elsewhere because now it's inconsistent. And that also is part of the compositor module and what we do. I'll show a bit more later on also. And so on. So my tip here for you as a community, as a contributor is if you're a developer, for example, trying to implement a feature, look also elsewhere. Does it break inconsistency or not? If you're also given some feedback, or as an artist or a feature request, try to consider it elsewhere and see if this breaks Blender or if it's consistent with with everything else. And if it's inconsistent, how can you solve it? Right. So this much about consistency. Next, I'd like to say a few words about Blender's vision, how does this concretely translate into our daily work? Right. So when talking to users, we see a very, very typical workflow. Just smiling to the person who actually helped me with that. We see people starting out with something abstract, like some sort of storytelling or a story or just a meeting, really. And then they go into Blender, and then you start modeling, you start doing animatics, you start doing rendering. But at some point, you leave Blender for compositing. Remembering Blender's vision, this is really not what we want.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that use After Effects or Premiere or DaVinci or Resolve.
And yeah, the surprising part is some people just come back, into Blender for animatics, and then you go get back and forth and back and forth.
It's not so easy to use the compositing in Blender. It's not so easy because usually you don't have layers, so it's a bit hard to use.
So
for me,
if you want to realize Blender's vision here, we really want to have something, Blender all the way. So what do? We reach out to users, just look out for people doing cool stuff online, and then noticing they're not using the compositor for compositing, like why not, and and so on. We've been also doing some user interviews, just asking how are people doing their compositing workflows inside or outside Blender. They're both super valuable to us, and listen to their feature requests and general feedback. So for you, the community, would really, really love to interview more and more people. So if you just work with compositing in one way or another, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear your story. Whether you're working in the studio or just a hobbyist, I'd like to use this, nice conference to connect with you and to really, really know your workflow there.
If you do compositing in Blender, reach out to Blender Foundation. It could be a good opportunity.
So yeah, I would like to share all the conclusions that we have so far. So first, let's define our problem formally, right? So why do people leave Blender? We can summarize it in like a features as a general thing, and there's a lots of features that people want, as always. But we can focus on a few things that we find very interesting. So, for example,
a long time ago, I tried to use the compositing in Blender. I tried to composite it in Blender, and it just to put a layer in front of other. It wasn't easy, so it's really I think the most of the users want an easy to use tool, and if you can't use layers or you can't use a simple way to mix images together, because a lot of people, they don't have knowledge of on how to use nodes and how to combine them and how to put things, how to mix them, how to put things or one thing over the other, and so I think it should be easier to use.
For example, the lack of presets. Some people just go somewhere else, do a very quick presets, and then come back to Blender. And there's also the problem of a high learning curve that we see a little bit recurrent, especially if you're already familiar with another software. So we'll address those. And the solution, if we want to define it as, we'll first, if it's complex, make it simple. And if there are presets missing, let's find or introduce assets. Assets in the sense that presets in Blender, we kind of use them interchangeably. So let's see what this means exactly. So for simplifying, consistency is part of making the workflow simple. So another example of making consistency not on the node level, but also on the work workflow level where, for example, how do you create a node tree? How do you get started? You get started the same way you get started in the shader editor and then geometry nodes and modifier and so on. So you just press the new button and then you have your a reasonable default or a reasonable amount of nodes as a default, so you can get started a little bit quicker. We redesigned some nodes. So there were some nodes where we thought they're a little bit, maybe even intimidating, not really complex, that just try to make them a little bit simpler, not necessarily less, with less inputs or so on, but make them a little bit more understandable. And also this includes removing some options. For example, here we thought use alpha, and alpha, no one really uses it. It only confuses people. We have more questions than answers, so let's remove it, keep it simple. Another example is the file output node. This, everyone almost uses it, whether you use Blender or not. So a lot of people do compositing in Blender and they like to save all their renders first. And we saw a lot of pain points here. So as you know, before you needed to really export every pass individually. So you'd have a lot of steps. You go to the file output, you rename your pass, and then you link them together. And what we did now is something way more convenient without really losing much. You just select the two and then let Blender connect all the passes automatically.
Nice.
Without
Much
really,
easier.
as I said, losing any features. It's really just simpler as it is. Cool stuff. Yeah, Gizmo.
Similar to Marmoset. Marmoset tool, when you need to export the baked maps, you just check whatever you need to export, and when you say in which folder you want to save the files, and Marmoset rename each texture automatically.
Are something that make Blender more intuitive and more simple. So we try to add more of those, for example, here for creating masks or for visualizing how to split two renders or so.
That's really useful also. You as what I remember when using compositing in Blender, you couldn't like change the size or the shape of the mask. You need to just tweak the numbers. It wasn't really intuitive.
So that's
So
about
this
it
is
about
a good thing. It's a good thing.
the simplifying compositing. So the part of it, as you can see, it's a large topic, but those are the best examples. The next one is assets. What does it mean to have assets? So the summary is to have something like this. You have an asset shelf. You can grab something out of it. You can put it in the node editor and start doing some relatively complex effects straight away. The idea is to not have all the effects or everything or whatever, but to have that kind of separation between if I want to, in this example, do a vignette, I don't really need the knowledge of masking, or I don't need the knowledge of blurring. Like if you think about vignette, you should have a vignette. If you think about sepia filter, you should have a sepia filter, and not think about, oh, I need to think about tinting, I need to think about scaling, and so on.
I agree.
So that's where the assets come into the picture. This is not as simple as just creating new node groups. For us in Blender, it means exposing a lot of inputs or a lot of options as inputs. For example, previously we had some options that you can tweak, but you couldn't connect anything to them. This is something that advanced users always like. They like to drive things externally and then have very fine control over them, but it might intimidate beginners a little bit. So it's more of for the power users. Same for menus. So now we have menus that are exposed as inputs, and then you can drive them from the outside. Also, we need to support new types of sockets on like 2D vectors, integers, Boolean, so that you can, at the end of the day, create some very nice assets that have menus, that have different types of inputs, so that they're at the end of the day really easy to use for beginners, right? And this is where really, assets are the gist of combining powerful tools with simplicity. You have on the low level very powerful nodes that are very flexible, but you can build assets with them that are very easy for beginners to use. Or not even beginners, like even people who really don't want to think, just get started a bit faster. That's the asset part. And for you, the community, this is still a very ongoing project, so it's not, it will be part of 5.0, but we're still looking for a lot of feedback for the upcoming releases as well. So if you want to contribute with assets you think everyone should benefit from, or if you want to give us some feedback on the existing assets if they don't look good to you or so, that's your opportunity there. So reach out to us at devtalk.blender.org and
devtalk.
Give us feedback there.
Okay. Future plans.
Maybe the cool stuff. The future plans. So we, I'll just go through them straight away. So we want to go further with simplifying. So we still think that nodes are generally harder to use than no nodes, and especially for simple effects. So we want to go to the layered approach, so where we have something like compositing similar to the modifier stack. So before. You have no nodes at all, and then you add effects and stack them on top of each other. Exactly. This is only now possible because, as I introduced all the reusable nodes, I introduced the assets. This is the natural next move, and we couldn't do it like realistically or reasonably before that. That's the next big thing coming to Blender. The next maybe more of exciting is sequencer. And the sequencer you'll be able to use you'll be able to use the compositor to do all your color grading and so on. This is also coming up very, very soon. We're not looking for feedback yet. There's a few bugs here and there to fix. And then we will be reaching out on the usual channels. So if you want to give feedback or follow the development there, now's the time. And last but not least, we also want to introduce compositing in the shader editor. This is a little bit maybe too early or it's in the early design phases where we really want to do per object compositing. So you don't composite the whole scene, but you go little by little. So those are our plans for next year. And now we're just to summarize all.
Keep users in Blender,
the content I
just introduced vision.
We are going for consistency and simplicity for Blender in the past and in the short-term future. Okay. This, we believe, will keep users using Blender. They stay within Blender also for compositing, and therefore realize Blender's mission, which is to do art from start to finish in Blender.
From start to finish.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I think we might have time for one question or so.
Would it theoretically be possible to create nodes that evaluate open source plugins?
Evaluate what, sorry?
OFX plugins.
So it's a long answer. So the short answer, yes. So it would be possible, but we don't see it as nodes, or it will probably be something external.
Okay, so what do you think, guys, about these new ideas to simplify the compositing in Blender and the idea to try to keep all the users from start to finish using Blender? Do you think that with these changes, users will be more like to stay in Blender also with compositing? What do you think? See you in the next video, and we'll be watching these different videos from the Blender Conference 2025.